What's the difference between a ribeye, a cowboy steak, and a tomahawk? It's a more complicated question than you might think, but knowing the answer is the key to unlocking your beef's true potential. You may have never heard of a cowboy steak before, but chances are that you've seen one. Also known as a Frenched bone-in ribeye, you've likely encountered this steak on upscale menus and glass butcher cases in grocery stores and markets. A regular ribeye with the bone trimmed away and a tomahawk steak are both sibling cuts of the cowboy steak, and they're more commonly used too. At its core, a cowboy steak is a bone-in ribeye. As a ribeye, this steak features a healthy mix of tender, red meat and ribbons of fat, or marbling. This marbling is what makes the ribeye one of the most desirable cuts of meat. But the cowboy steak comes with the added bonus of being bone-in. The bone is thought to add flavor and moisture to the meat, making it a valuable choice for steak lovers. Crucially, the bone on a cowboy steak is trimmed to stretch just a few inches past the edge of the meat. In the world of meaty steaks, where does the cowboy cut find itself? Gabriel Lorado, co-founder of online butcher Meat and Bone, explains that cowboy steaks, along with tomahawks, are basically extensions of the ribeye steak. Speaking to Mashed, he explained, tomahawks, cowboys, and ribeyes are essentially all ribeye steaks. Lorado goes on to explain that the variations are slight, adding that they are differentiated mainly by the presence and length of the bone. Basically, your run-of-the-mill ribeye has had the rib bone fully trimmed. The tomahawk, on the other hand, is considered the king of ribeyes. It features a bone that protrudes up to a foot from the bottom of the steak. And if the tomahawk is king, then the cowboy steak is a prince, as its bone is left intact, but trimmed shorter than its larger counterpart. This distinction means that all cowboy steaks and tomahawks are ribeyes, but not all ribeyes are cowboy steaks and tomahawks. As one of the most popular steaks you can buy, ribeyes are commonly found on restaurant menus and in stores. The cowboy cut and tomahawk varieties are considered a little more prestigious, however, meaning they're often kept out of reach for the average diner or shopper. Nevertheless, it's worth remembering that besides price, availability, and the size of the bone, all three variations of this steak are virtually the same.
Well, you're gonna pull those pistols or whistle Dixie.
Beef has played an important role in history around the world, as cattle have been a major source of food in many regions. When it comes to American history, beef helped with the country's expansion out west, where cowboys would drive cattle along trails to rail stations and population centers. Cowboys on the trail had a simple and sturdy diet, consisting largely of foods they could find in the natural world. Naturally, the cows they were herding became a source of sustenance as well. The exact origin of the term cowboy steak is murky, but many consider the name to be a product of these wranglers' diets. Ribeyes were seemingly the perfect meal for someone performing physical labor all day on horseback too, as the combination of protein and fat would provide cowboys with substantial fuel for their labor-intensive work. This source of rich protein was especially important because cattle were plentiful, and other calorie-heavy foods on the cattle trail could be scarce. The cowboy steak's defining feature is, of course, its protruding bone, which also has its place in history. There are claims that the cowboy cut's name comes from this little handle of a bone, as cowboys could supposedly use it to hold their supper over a campfire. And it's possible to do this today too, allowing steak lovers and history buffs to bring a little of the past into their meal. There's a reason ribeyes are some of the most popular steaks, and that's because they just taste so good. Ribeyes are the optimal blend of juicy steak and buttery fat. According to Gabriel Lorado, the cowboy steak in particular may be the ideal steak for many meat eaters in terms of flavor. He says, the cowboy steak is perfect for anyone who loves their meat juicy, tender, and well-marbled, which all translates to superb flavor. Unlike cuts of meat like the filet, which is famous for not containing much fat at all, cowboy steak brings a complex mix of flavors to the table. Once cooked, a cowboy steak's ribbons of fat will melt and infuse into the meat, creating that rich signature ribeye taste. Each mouthful of a cowboy steak will be bursting with flavor, which is one reason fat is so important on a steak. The bone of a ribeye is revered by some steak experts, who claim that cooking the bone at high heat will release the marrow, adding a rich flavor to the steak. The problem is, though, that this isn't actually true. Even through the cooking process, there is no way for the marrow to escape the bone and infuse the meat. And yet so many chefs still swear by a good bone-in steak.
Well, mister, this is the cowboy way.
Although the marrow theory is more of a myth, Lorado tells us the bone does make a difference to your meat. According to him, it enhances both the flavor and moisture content of the meat during cooking. As a conductor, the bone takes heat into itself, which makes the surrounding meat take a little longer to cook. This keeps the meat closest to the bone moist, tender, and delicious. It may not be the marrow adding flavor to your bone-in steak, but that hunk of bone isn't totally for show either. Ribeyes and cowboy steaks by association are known for their superior marbling. A cowboy steak may have a leg up in the fat department though, thanks to its bone. Leaving the bone intact in a ribeye may not increase marbling, but it does accentuate it, as the temperature control feature of the bone helps to bring out that buttery flavor in the fat. Notably, all steaks come in a variety of grades, and each will have an effect on the steak's marbling. Wagyu and Angus beef steaks have a bit more marbling than others, as the cows they are sourced from are fed diets high in grains. The breeding and genetics of the cows are also important factors when it comes to increased marbling. That said, more is not always better when it comes to marbling, and how much marbling any steak should have is highly dependent on personal taste. Gabriel Lorado recommends that steak lovers downgrade if they enjoy a higher ratio of red meat in their cowboy steaks, saying, if you're looking for something a bit less fatty, steer clear of Wagyu cuts and choose a USDA Prime G1 certified cowboy steak instead. Don't worry though, because all ribeyes will give you at least a few mouthfuls of marbled meat. If you'd never heard of a cowboy steak before today, you're not alone. The good news is, because this ribeye variation is a lesser-known steak, ordering one in a steakhouse is bound to impress. At the very least, anyone in your company will consider you a real steak connoisseur, earning you at least a couple cool points at the table.
I would suggest sticking around and watching him eat it, because it only takes 4 minutes and it's pretty amazing.
While a good steak does more than put on a show, presentation is a big part of a true steak dinner. The cowboy cut certainly ticks boxes in that respect, with its bone handle not only adding flavor, but also some serious flair. As Lorado tells us, the bone not only enhances the visual appeal, making it more attractive and offering chefs creative plating options, but it also adds a certain sexiness to the dish that can elevate a dining experience. Cooking a steak can be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it. When you're cooking a ribeye though, even the simplest of cooking methods can result in a flavorful meal. The marbling of the steak will infuse flavor as it cooks, and the bone of a cowboy cut ribeye acts as a temperature control to keep moisture in. This means that you can rustle up a tasty dinner by simply slapping a cowboy steak on the grill. You can even use the bone-in handle as a means to flip the steak as it cooks. When we asked Gabriel Lorado how to prepare a cowboy steak, he explained that there's more than one way to cook this tasty cut. Lorado says, prepare it just like a ribeye. That said, preparing a cowboy steak often involves different methods, like reverse searing to manage its thicker cut and bone-in structure, ensuring even cooking and a flavorful crust.
Let's get cooking.
For the steak-loving traditionalist, there may be no better way to cook a cut of meat than with the flavor-infusing cast iron skillet. And while the tomahawk steak is often much too big for this method, the cowboy steak is able to fit inside most cast iron pans. Every cut of meat tastes and feels a bit different from one another. The ribeye is a savory cut with marbling, and as such, it can be paired with many different bold flavors and combinations of tastes. When asked about the taste of the cowboy cut, Lorado had some suggestions about pairing the steak for optimal flavor. He said, flavor-wise, its robust taste pairs well with bold seasonings and smoky barbecue flavors. And it also complements richer sides such as creamed spinach or a blue cheese sauce to balance its intense beefiness. As a foundation, a cowboy steak holds up to other strong flavors, making it ideal for adding a crumble, sauce, or other aromatic toppings. The buttery flavor of a fatty ribeye also pairs well with grilled fruits, both bitter and sweet. That may not be the first thing you think of pairing with a steak, but the defined flavors of pomegranate and cranberry can make a beefy meal truly pop. Sweeter fruits such as apricots and peaches have a wholly different effect on beef, making a ribeye taste lighter and more refreshing. You've likely heard of aged wine or cheese, but it's also true that beef can be aged. In fact, it usually is, as aging is crucial for enhancing flavor. The dry aging process involves keeping large cuts of meat at a cool and controlled temperature and environment, typically anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. The longer a cut is dry aged, the more umami flavor is brought out of the meat. According to Lorado, cowboy steaks in particular are great for dry aging. One standout feature of Cowboy steaks is that they are excellent for dry aging, which can really enhance their flavor and make them a fantastic choice for any meat lover. Cowboy steaks' size and marbling content makes them prime for dry aging. Smaller cuts of meat dry out much too quickly for effective dry aging, and the fat in a steak is necessary for the desired flavor and moistness. Ribeyes can certainly be a pricey cut of meat, with costs ranging wildly from around $15 per pound to $70 per pound, depending on the source. You're paying for a prime part of the cow, after all. Within the ribeye family, however, the Cowboy steak is likely to make your money go much farther.
Ka-ching!
While the tomahawk steak is always incredibly pricey, the Cowboy steak will give you the same satisfaction at a lower price. According to Gabriel Lorado, the tomahawk's defining feature is responsible for that cut's higher price tag. He explains, the tomahawk, often referred to as the king of steaks due to its impressive long bone and substantial size, tends to be pricier, partly because you're paying for the weight of the bone and the special butchering required. The presentation of the magnificent tomahawk may be worth the price for some, but spending extra doesn't fill your belly anymore. In this sense, the tomahawk is less economical, as the weight of the bone adds to the cost, despite being inedible. The Cowboy steak, meanwhile, is a bone-in ribeye that trims away this excess weight, giving you a more affordable, yet equally delectable steak.